Hey, what's happening? This is Chris Shiflett from Foo Fighters. You are listening to the Vinyl Guide. And when you're done listening to that, please listen to my new single, Blacktop, White Lines.
This episode is brought to you by Groove Washer, the best record cleaners and protective sleeves for your vinyl collection. Ask for the Groove Washer from your local shop or go to groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. And now, on with the show.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 382 of the Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And guess where I'm at, people? I'm doing this episode from my hotel room in Austin, Texas. I've been here this week catching up with friends, buying records, and seeing shows. Of course, you could check out my recent adventures on the Instagram page at Vinyl Guide. But I gotta tell you, people, I'm super excited about this week's show. We have an actual Foo Fighter with us, talking records, vinyl collecting, and more, Mr. Chris Shiflett, who you may know from the Foos, you may know him from No Use for a Name, and you may know him from various solo projects. Now, today, Chris wants each of you to check out his new track on streaming services, Blacktop, White Lines. You can go listen to it now. Chris has a ton of solo material out there, and the new album is coming up, so check out his new track, Blacktop, White Lines, ready for your ear holes right now. Now, Chris and I speak about quite a few many things. Early records, the rare recordings he's on with Rat Pack, joining, recording, and touring with No Use for a Name, and of course, joining the Foos. He talks about some of the crazy times, some memories of opportunities that only a band like Foo Fighters would get. And in full disclosure, we did not talk about Foo activities in recent times. No gossip here, folks. Just good, solid music facts from a dude who has been lucky and talented enough to see the world from those unique heights, and who was cool and humble enough to come on our dorky record podcast and share some insight, wisdom, and laughs. And by the way, if you're new to the Vinyl Guide podcast, thanks so much for tuning in. Please have a chair, grab a beer out of the fridge, and after you listen to Chris and I talk, we have hundreds of other interviews you may be interested in, including episode 366 with Gerald V. Casale of Devo, episode 355 with East Bay Ray of Dead Kennedys, episode 351 with Brian Baker of Bad Religion, Minor Threat, and more, episode 344 with Jack Endino, engineer and producer of many sub-pop releases, including Nirvana, episode 306 with Robbie Krieger of The Doors, episode 300 with Peter Frampton, episode 297 with Tom Scholes of Boston, episode 293 with Billy Gibbons from a little Texas band called ZZ Top, and literally hundreds more. Subscribe to the Vinyl Guide for free in your podcast app. Scroll, download, listen, and enjoy. And with that, let's get straight into our conversation with Mr. Chris Shiflett, talking records, vinyl, Foos, and lots more.
Hey there.
Why, hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I'm actually not good. I'm sick, man. You can probably hear it. I got a cold.
All right, open up and say What are your symptoms?
I'm so sick that I actually just clicked on the wrong Zoom link for an interview I did 2 days ago and sat there going like, where is this guy?
Okay. You're so sick you're time traveling.
Exactly.
Anyway, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Vinyl Guide. We talk about rare records. We talk about collectibles and those sort of things. And I guess my first question is, are you a record collector? You got a record collection going?
Well, okay, so it's interesting. You know, I grew up obviously in the era of vinyl. Where that was all there. I mean, that wasn't all there was, but that was all we had growing up. You know, cassette tapes. We never had an 8-track player or anything like that, so everything was vinyl. And I still have all my records. I have a fair amount of vinyl. Most of it's from when I was a kid, up till about the early 90s, I think, when I finally gave in and started buying CDs. Like I held on for a long time, and not out of like a sense of being like an audiophile or anything, but just because I just had my old stereo, you know, from when I was a kid. And then I didn't really buy vinyl for a long time. And then I didn't have a record player for years. I didn't have a record player at all from like the mid 90s till just a couple of years ago. So, and I had all my vinyl in boxes, and they would just be anywhere time I moved, I'd move all my records with me, but never unpack them because I never had anything to play it on. And when vinyl started to become a hot thing again, I started buying some of the re-releases and stuff, just thinking, well, someday I'm going to have a record player again, so I might as well get some of this stuff. And it's cool. I love vinyl. I just love being able to hold it and look at it. And I spent so much time as a kid, like just studying every inch of inside and out of every record that I had. That was sort of like you'd put the record on and then you'd just sit there and just look at the pictures. And, it was always that thrill of like, did they put the lyrics in? Oh, it's just a white, sleeve, dang. And that whole thing. So yeah, I do have a fair amount of vinyl. Most of it's like pretty beat up and scratchy. And and then I guess the conclusion to that story is that just a couple of years ago, I bought a record player, bought a turntable and set it up. And so have gone through, and unpacked all my vinyl finally. And so I have it all there ready to listen to it.
I would imagine with a career like yours and a lot of movement around, you don't have a whole lot of time to sit down and listen to vinyl. I mean, CDs and streaming is probably a appropriate medium because you're on the road so much. Yeah,
sure. Well, no, that's absolutely true. And it's the funny thing is like, I thought, oh, this is going to be great, man. I'm going to unpack all my records and I'm just going to sit because I have it like out in it's not like in the main part of our house. It's in a converted garage thing that is really kind of intended for, it's like the kids zone, and I just imagine myself out there with like a cup of coffee and just listening to my Aerosmith records from 1978 or whatever. And I find that I never do. It's so weird, man. I think I've become so accustomed to not listening to music that way and not consuming music that way that I just haven't like slipped back into it. But God, when you do, it's so great. It is so great because that was such a big part of my life growing up was that's how I listened to music. I would just put a record on. I would listen. I would just put, I wasn't one of those people that was like jumping around. I just put it on the first song, play it through, flip it over, put it on the first song on the other side, play it through. And that, like, it is the weirdest thing with like how I watch my kids listen to records versus how we did. And I have a very different relationship to music, I think, because of it, that we just took it in, these records were like a whole piece. And you sort of knew the singles, but you knew all the album tracks too, I mean, I love doing it. I should make myself do it more, but like, most of the time when I'm listening to music now, it's like exactly what you said. It's I got these stupid little things in and I'm jogging or something, you know what I mean? Or I'm in my car going from point A to point B.
So do you go to record stores that often anymore?
If I see them, yeah, I'm always, I'll always bop into them. If I'm like out on the road and I'm walking through a neighborhood and I see a cool record store, you can pretty much immediately recognize, whether it's a cool one or not,
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll go through and just look at stuff, but it's, you just don't, it's a different world, like where I grew up in like not a huge city, Santa Barbara's a city, but it's not a gigantic city. And I can't even remember how many record stores we had. Record stores everywhere, and it's just that's not the world anymore. So when you do see them, it's always like, oh, cool, I'm going there. And I like the idea of like, supporting a local business and all that sort of thing too.
What local record stores do you have around that you may frequent more than others?
Here in LA, I mean, I live full time in LA now, and I know there's a couple. I never go into record stores in LA, if I'm honest. I used to go into Amoeba. And then they moved. I mean, that's like pathetic. I don't even know where Amoeba is now. I know it's still open somewhere.
Yeah. I hit that up last time and just the parking was a nightmare. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm done.
Yeah. There's one over in Santa Monica, I remember, that's not too far from the 405. I can't remember what it's called, but I've been in there.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cool because, I had older brothers. I have older brothers. So growing up with older brothers, I didn't even need to buy my own records for a very long time. So I didn't go out with my money and buy a record myself until probably, towards the end of elementary school or something. And when I did, I bought Kiss Double Platinum, which was an odd choice because we already had that as well as all the Kiss records. So it's like, why do you need the greatest hits? I don't know. But that's what I went out and bought. So when my oldest son wanted to go buy a record, which I'm sure was like me manipulating him into wanting to go buy a record. I took him to that record store over in Santa Monica that I can't remember the name of now. And I kind of steered him into, I saw that they had Double Platinum and I cajoled him into buying double platinum too, because now that's both of our first records that we ever bought.
And you never play it.
And never play it. Yeah. And I'm sure he's never played it either.
Yeah. Was there an artist or a record that really switched that switch in your head that made you want to play music?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all of them, you know, it's hard to even pick one. The Stones, certainly a huge one. My brother Mike was a gigantic Stones fan. So we just had all the Stones records on repeat all the time when I was real little. Kiss, it was just massive. And then, so Ace Frehley, you know, made me want to be a guitar player. And Randy Rhoads, man, when those first couple Ozzy records happened, like in my world, he was like a god, you know? And just that era, you know, it's all those types of players, whether it was Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen or all those, you know, the Guitar Hero folks.
Now in Santa Barbara, with sounds like quite a family with a lot of musical interest. I mean, you had records around, you had older brothers, kind of giving you that sort of juice. Were you going to see shows at all?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, my brothers started going to shows because they were like a few years older than me. Mm-hmm. So I think about some of the shows that they got to go see, and I'm so sad that I was just a little too young, like, because they started to go see shows like, you know, Jeff Beck at the County Bowl, and when Sabbath toured with Blue Oyster Cult, the Black and Blue tour with the first, you know, on Heaven and Hell when Ronnie Dio was singing, mm-hmm. and my brother Scott saw Van Halen at the Forum on Fair Warning tour, just stuff like that. You know what I mean? That, like, you look back and you, God, if I'd just been a couple of years older, I would have seen a bunch more. But my first show was Ronnie James Dio at the Arlington Theater. It was my first concert ever.
Oh, mine too.
Black
Dio in
what?
19. Yeah, my first concert was Dio in '83 with Y&T and Dawkins opening.
Wow. Okay, Black and Blue opened the show that I went to, but I did see Y&T at the same venue just within a couple of years of that, and Dawkins as well. I saw Dawkins a couple times. I saw Dawkins at the Palladium too. But yeah, the Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara, which is like beautiful old theater, used to get a lot of great shows. So that was where my first concert experiences were.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you had some larger shows coming through. When did you discover punk rock?
Well, punk rock really, like, you know, I mean, I was like listening to heavy metal and stuff, and then probably in about junior high. I mean, I remember when this thing called punk rock happened, and, you know, I'm old enough to remember that in the late 70s, that there was this thing that like freaked everybody out, you know, like it was really weird when you think about the reaction to that. I don't know that there's been like a genre has come along that's inspired that same kind of reaction. People fucking hated it. It was like viewed as this like threat, you know. It was all, people hated it more than they hated, like, I don't know, like, you know, you think about the era, you know, they more than they hated like communism or whatever. Like, it really was this visceral, like, argh, punk rock is just, it's a threat. And that wasn't like our scene or whatever. Like, I remember my brother Mike bought the first Sex Pistols, the only Sex Pistols record, and the first Clash record, just out of curiosity, you know. And like, I remember him, you know, listening to it, and like, we're all of us like kind of like just laughing at like, what is this, you know, like, that's not Rainbow, you know.
That guy can't hold a note.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's funny stuff like that. I remember the first time I saw a punk rocker, and this would have, I mean, I don't know what year it was. It would have been like in the early 80s, you know. And like what a punk rocker looked like at that point, because it was before it was like big hair and studded belts and all that. It was just a dude with a really short haircut and like a thrift store check shirt. And I remember you could just recognize that as like, whoa, what is that? You know, that's some Devo freak or whatever, you know, like, yeah. So that scene was bubbling up around, you know, there was like a punk rock scene in Santa Barbara. I wasn't a part of it until I started skateboarding in junior high, and, you know, skateboarding and punk rock were kind of intrinsically linked. And so I remember my friend Luke had like a Black Flag record and a JFA record and some stuff like that. And you would just go if you went to the skate park or you went to people's ramps, it was usually like punk rock was blaring. So just through that, I just started to, and it also like shows, like I like live shows in Santa Barbara at the lower level. Like if you were going to like parties and, shows at the People's Park and stuff like that out in Ivy and the Red Barn, it was always either punk rock or thrash metal. Thrash metal was like bubbling up. Thrash metal, speed metal, all that stuff was happening. So like the stuff that I was into like, I was going down to LA to go see like LA Guns and Faster Pussycat and stuff like that. But there was no scene for that where I grew up. So if you were going to go to a gig, it was going to be punk rock or it was going to be metal.
Yeah. So joining the band Rat Pack, how quickly did that come together? Like how did that transition happen?
Well, what happened was when I was in ninth grade, we put together a band called the Lost Kittens that wound up having a bunch of different lineups over the years. And that was like my consistent band that I was in all through high school and even a bit beyond. But so we played the talent show in ninth grade. And then in 10th grade, I wound up being in a band with some friends called Legion of Doom. And Legion of Doom was more like a punk rock thing. And we opened, the one gig we ever played was opening for Rat Pack and NoFX and oh man, I'm totally drawing a blank. What's that band called? That band from Venice. Whatever. We opened up at when I was in 10th grade at the show at the Golden Eagle Pool Hall, and Rat Pack was on that show. And at the time, their bass player was Vince, who had been in RKO. And I remember we were rehearsing, our bass player worked at this yogurt shop on State Street, and we were rehearsing in there after hours. And Matt Ratt, the singer for Rat Pack, came in, and I think that was the first time I ever met him. And I was playing guitar in Legion of Doom, but that was my first encounter with him. And I think through that and then playing the show, right after that show, Vince must have left Rat Pack. I don't remember the details, but and then Matt asked me to join, so I joined on bass.
So transitioning from guitar to bass, I mean, you were still probably instrumental fluid at that point. Was that a point of consideration, or you just wanted to be in a band?
I just wanted to be in a band, but I was also instrumentally challenged at that point. I mean, I couldn't play my way out of a wet paper bag, you know what I mean? So like bass was like, my brother Scott is an amazing bass player. Like he's a guy that actually chose to play bass and plays like a bass player. I was just a guitar player going like, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I remember like, this came up in another interview recently, but it made me remember that the guitar player for Rat Pack got really mad at me because he was like, dude, quit playing lead bass. Ain't no lead bass. You're the bassist. Just play bass. Play the root note, man. Stop moving around. Because I didn't play bass like a bass player. I played it like a guitar player. I was like, I wanted to be, throwing in some sweet licks.
You still got Ace Frehley in your head. Yeah.
100%.
So Rat Pack, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's one record you made on Mystic Records as Doug Moody's label.
Well, okay, so there was 2 Rat Pack records. There was actually 3 Rat Pack records, I think, ultimately. And there may be more, but I think there was 3. There was the first one came out on Mystic, and I was not on that. That was before me. And that I'm trying to remember what was on the album cover. I think it's like rats skating a bowl.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the second one was the one that I played on. And it's like a 4-song 7-inch, right? And that also was on Mystic Records. And that's got a skull my friend Kenneth drew. That's what that is. And that was the first, I think that might have been the first time I ever recorded anything, first or second, and I remember we recorded those songs just at somebody's house on Glebe. Man, I wish I knew where those tapes were. Mm-hmm. They must be, well, they might be in a trash heap. They might be in a landfill at this point, but it would be great because you listen to that. You can find that those recordings on YouTube, and it's pretty. It's green
vinyl, right? It was pressed on green vinyl.
It was, yeah.
It's on SuperSeven Records. The bass is credited to a guy named Boat Plastic.
Yes. That was the nickname that they gave me.
Okay. How did you get the name Boat Plastic?
Because Matt and Sean from Rat Pack had moved down to LA around that time, and they met this other musician dude named Jet Silver. And I remember, and I was 16 or whatever. I was in high school. I was living at my mom's house, but I had a phone in my room, and I remember they called me in the middle of the night, out of their minds on acid, and they're like, "Dude, we figured out the perfect nickname for you." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" Because our friend Jet Silver, we're gonna call you Boat Plastic because it's the railer version of Jet Silver. And then they just started laughing. I was like, all right, hung up. And then that fucking stuck, man. There's like within a small crew of people in Santa Barbara to this day refer to me as Boat.
Now, you have a lot of nicknames. For me, first, you were, was it Jake Jackson? Jake Jackson.
Yeah. Well, that was because I worked at Fat Records for a minute, and there was already a guy there named Chris. So Mike nicknamed me Jake Jackson. So it would be less confusing in the workplace.
Okay. And that just carried through. So that's the alias on all the Me First stuff, but it doesn't go beyond that necessarily. Okay. All right. Yeah. Now, connecting with Fat Rec, I suppose that came through joining No Use for a Name, yeah?
No, it was the other way around. It was I moved up to San Francisco with Joey from Lagwagon, and he helped me get a job at Fat Records. And I'd interacted with Mike a little bit before that, but I didn't really know him. But Joey, helped put in the good word for me, and Mike hired me at Fat. And I only worked at Fat for a few weeks, but during those few weeks, that's when No Use for a Name's guitar player quit. And then Mike just kind of slotted me in. Yeah.
So that seems to have kind of worked well by design. You just work for a record label where you like the records and then wait for the opportunity to fall.
Well, exactly. But that's the funny thing, because I was new there, and it was like, at that point, that was like the beginning of 1995, man, that was the place to be to me. That was like the coolest place in the world. And I didn't want to fuck that up, I didn't want to piss Mike off or Aaron or anybody in the office and like try to join a band on their label, even though really that's what I wanted to do, I didn't want to work at a label. I wanted to be in a band. So I just kept my mouth shut until Mike, said like, "Dude, I know you play guitar. You should just go play guitar with them."
Okay.
So with his blessing, I went and did it.
Of course. Were you a better shipping guy than Spike?
No, Spike, I'm sure, was much better because he did it for way longer. My job, I wasn't actually in the shipping department, really. My job was supposed to be calling record stores to make sure that they had Fat Records stuff, in stock. But what I actually spent most of my time there doing was cutting shrink wrap off of CDs, because NoFX was about to go to tour Europe and you couldn't have any shrink wrap on the CD. So that's what I really did. And I probably spent like a week calling labels. But then after I joined No Use for a Name, I would come home and I'd be broke, and Mike would let me come down and pack stuff to ship out. So,
all right.
Yeah. So that was my experience being a shipping guy was pretty limited.
You had the job equivalent of the guys that hang out at Home Depot. Like every so often, Mike would pull up and say, "Hey, I need the..."
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Were you part of the tour for Leche con Carne?
Yeah. I didn't play on that record, but I toured it. Yeah. Right. Because Ed, the guitar player that was in the band that played on that record, left not too long after it came out. Yeah.
And you worked so much with Tony. What did you learn from working so closely with Tony?
Oh man, got a lot. Tony was a great songwriter, and he would talk, like, I remember at the very end of me being in that band, like, I never wrote songs for No Use for a Name. Tony wrote all those songs, and we would all kind of like help arrange them and stuff. But he wrote them. And towards the end of my time in that band, I gave him a couple song ideas that didn't have any vocals or anything. I think I would like play the vocal melody on guitar. I was like so nervous about singing, and he gave me good pointers on that. Like, you know, like his thing. What I remember about him as a songwriter is him really stressing like the melody. You know, right. You really got to like have a good, strong melody. You know, and I think what he was saying was like these melodies are not very good. Yeah. But he was doing it nicely, gently. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, yeah.
So he seems to have been kind of a bit of an early mentor in terms of your songwriting, because your songwriting from that point on, it really seems to be extraordinarily consistent, even down to the new track. You know, Blacktop White Lines, you know, I mean, and the melodies, I think, are something that always stick out in your work. I mean, like when you're working with Foos, do you bring in ideas, or how does that songwriting process happen with that group rather than on your solo stuff?
Oh, it's totally different because no, I don't write in Foo Fighters. You know, it's all Dave's stuff. You know, Dave writes all the Foo Fighters stuff. So, you know, it's similar in a sense to how it was in No Use for a Name. You know, where you know Dave will bring in a pretty fully formed song idea, and then we'll learn it, and we'll you know everybody kind of does their thing, and it evolves a little bit, but. But like, you know, Dave usually has a pretty solid idea of where he wants things to go, you know, musically. So it's a little bit different, you know, because Dave can play everything too. You know what I mean? He'll make a demo and he's playing everything on it. It sounds great. You know, that could be the record really, you know what I mean? Whereas like, you know, working with when I was in No Use for a Name, it was just such a different thing, you know, like it was, Tony's demos would be a lot rougher. You know, so there was maybe things would change a lot, you know, when we fleshed them out.
So you had the opportunity to perhaps evolve those songs to a greater level than you really have right now with Foos.
I mean, I suppose it's just so different, you know. I think you know, I don't know. Over the year, I've been in Foo Fighters for so long as compared to any other band I was ever in that we have really approached making records in a lot of different ways. We've gone in with everything really mapped out. We've gone in with things not mapped out at all. And yeah, in recent years, it's been a little bit more of the latter. Like, you know, it's a little looser, and things get kind of worked out in the studio. So, you know, there's something to be said for all the different paths to making a record.
Yeah, I get the feeling now that the Foos have been at it so long that the confidence is very high that even if they step in the studio with no ideas, they will generate something.
Well, Dave always has more than enough ideas. I mean, if anything, it's like more ideas than you're ever going to get to. Usually, is the case. So it's not so much that there's going in without any idea at all. It's just going in without having worked it out with the whole band. Like you go in and you don't necessarily know. You know, you got like a demo of the song idea, and I always like will play along with it. And if I know that we're recording whatever song, you know, I'll try to think about what I'm going to play, but that always changes. And you never walk in and just like the thing that you thought you were going to play is the thing that winds up on the right, and never, you know, it always changes, you know? So yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it all, you know?
How do you
parse out with one thing, you come out something very different.
How do you parse the ideas between you and Pat and Dave? I mean, 3 guitar players, different styles. Like, how do you work out and kind of negotiate who's going to do what during the track?
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk to you about Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Ever find a record in a used bin where the vinyl is gorgeous, but the sleeve has this ugly split and is even falling completely apart? Well, that's okay. Grab it anyway, because with Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips, you can fix that right up. Seems Easy record repair strips repair seam splits from the inside, so it doesn't affect the appearance of a record sleeve, but it does make it functional again. With Seems Easy, records can now slide in and out like new. Turn a $5 used record into a $50 functioning collectible. Just ask your local record shop for Seems Easy strips strips, and if they're not in stock, go to SeamsEasy.com. That's Seems Easy with 2 Z's. Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Seems easy because it is. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
How do you parse the ideas between you and Pat and Dave? I mean, 3 guitar players, different styles. Like, how do you work out and kind of negotiate who's going to do what during the track?
It just, I don't know. We used to, when Pat first came back, we thought about that maybe a little bit more. We just do it. I don't know. You just, as you're layering stuff in the studio, you're just trying to, like, I try to go at it with, like, I don't want to step on anything that's already there, and it's all a big puzzle piece in that way. But it's not something that, like, we sit down and talk about and map out. It just kind of happens.
So the solo work,
that's what the guy mixing it does, is he mutes that shit. Mutes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you over record and then you kind of fix a bit of it in the mix, but overall the ideas are there about what you're going to do, the different roles. Is it that you then listen to the record or the final mix and say, okay, so live, here's what's going to happen now live.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Because you might have recorded some whole thing that doesn't wind up, by the time it, kicks around and gets through the recording process and then gets to being mixed and everything. Yeah. Things just change. And sometimes the part that you loved at the time that you did it just doesn't wind up in it. And that's just the reality of it, because the vocal got put on it and now all of a sudden something didn't work. You know what I mean? There's just a million reasons for why things evolve the way they do, but then there's playing it live, which is something totally different. Then we do have to sort of sit down and go, like, okay, what's really in this mix and what needs to be played. And I might wind up playing something that, like, was a part that Dave played on the record. You know what I mean? It's like, just because that it needs to be there, and maybe the thing that I did is, or maybe I'm doing like some weird combo part of, like, something he played and something I played. You know what I mean? Just to try to get both. Yeah.
Now, you've got a new LP coming out later this year. Is there a title for the new LP?
There is. I think that they wanted to hold off on announcing it.
Okay.
I don't want to blow a scoop, man.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you. My idea was, I didn't even want to put out a whole record, to be perfectly honest. Nothing against vinyl and records. I know they're cool. But my idea was just to put each individual track out and space it out, but I lost that marketing battle. So we're putting out a bunch of songs, like focus tracks, like 4 focus tracks, and then the full length. And the full length is like, proper 10-song album. But yeah, it's because of the way we're putting it out, it's going to be a minute. It's not going to come out until the fall, because we're spacing.
Yeah.
That's
the Me First and the Gimme Gimmes model. You start off with half a dozen singles and then pull it together for a record.
Well, Gimme Gimmes, the initial idea was never to put out a record at all. It was all going to be 7 inches, and every 7 inch was going to be on a different label. And we did that for a long time. Not for a long, long time, but we did that for a while until we put out that first full length.
Were you on all the Me First singles?
In the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on everything until I left.
Right. Okay. All right. So your involvement with Me First is done now. No more Me First.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And when you were joining Foos, I believe the story goes you went down for an audition, and to do that you left no use for a name. Is that right?
It's not quite. I was still in No Use for a Name. We were about to put out a record, and we were about to go on tour. We had just made a new record, that More Betterness record, and we were about to hit the road. And then I got the call to come audition for Foos, and went and did that. And I actually had 2 auditions. They were about a week apart.
Okay.
And after the second audition, found out that I got the gig, and then I left. Called Tony and everybody left.
Okay. All right. So they knew you kind of had this thing going on. They
didn't know. No, it was a little seedy.
Okay. All right. A little bit of
I was sneaking around.
Subterfuge.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
And how did Tony and the team take it when you gave them the news?
I mean, Tony was totally, like, he understood. It was a pain in the ass because, like I said, we were literally about to leave for tour, so they had to scramble. But then they got Dave Nassi, I think that day or the next day or whatever. Dave that played with them for years and great guitar player, and so it all worked out, you know.
And what did you do directly after you got the gig for Foo Fighters? I mean, they'd already recorded.
I got drunk. I got real drunk.
Now, what was something that changed in your life immediately once you joined the Foos?
I'll tell you the biggest thing. Having my own hotel room had never happened. Never happened on tour before. That was like a massive upgrade.
You mean I don't have to smell someone else's feet?
Yeah, I don't have to sleep in a bed with my bro. Isn't that great? That was awesome. Oh, and the other thing, I didn't have to carry my gear anymore. I was never again involved in the load in or the load out. And as a musician, having schlepped your amp in and out of the back of cars for, many years, that was pure luxury, let me tell you.
You just hand your guitar to someone at the end of the show and it shows up at the next one.
Boom, with fresh strings and in tune. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah. So you joined at a time when the band was about to go on tour, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you feel fully ingratiated with the band? Did you feel you were still on a bit of a watch list? I mean,
the exact same thing as when I joined No Use for a Name. No Use for a Name had an album out that they were touring that I didn't play on, and I didn't know anybody in the band. And when I joined Foo Fighters, they were about to put out the 3rd record, and I didn't know any of them. And so I was just going in, just kind of figuring it out on the fly. And we literally, I joined, and within the week we were out on the road. So you just got to know everybody quick just by doing it.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a real tumultuous time for the band, especially after that tour where there were various incidents. I think Dave went to do Queens of the Stone Age. One by one, the initial recordings, there wasn't a lot of kind of confidence with, I
was like, it's me.
As the new
guy. I fucked
guys.
this whole thing up for everybody. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I first joined the band, it wasn't tumultuous at all. It was, at least not from my point of view. I was like, fucking woohoo! It's the greatest. That whole first tour cycle was just a whirlwind. It's nuts. So fun. But there was a little hiccup around making that record, but we got through it, and then it was great. The tour cycle we did for the next record was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the original recordings for One by One, those have never been released. That first version of the record, is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Buried deep in the vaults, I'm sure. I was cleaning my studio out, and I found all these old CDs and stuff not too long ago, and there was a burn of that record in there, and I still haven't listened to it. I don't have a CD player, so one of these days, I'm afraid to even put that in my computer because I don't want to be the guy that it gets stolen from, that leaks it. You know what I mean?
Those are like classified documents. You need to have the FBI come over and completely cleanse your CDR collection.
I know. What if we listening to them and they're like better? You know what I mean? Like, in hindsight, we'd made the greatest record of all time.
Is there a lot of unreleased Foos that's just backlogged somewhere?
I think so. Yeah, there's probably a lot of unfinished, unreleased Foo Fighter recordings because, we always record more songs than come out on the record, and a lot of times the excess songs don't ever get completed. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when's the last time you were starstruck?
Ooh. Well, I'll tell you a good one. It goes full circle in this conversation. Just I am in the process of starting a new podcast that is a guitar thing. And I have put together a long list of potential guests, and I called Vivian Campbell, who nowadays he plays in Def Leppard, but back in the day he was Dio's guitar player on those early records, and I called him to see if I could interview him and talk to him on the phone last night, and that was pretty damn cool because I don't know him. I met him one time briefly years ago, but I don't know him, so I was pretty excited about that, man, because that's that's my first gig ever, and and he was a dude that when I was first going to shows and at that age, when I was really early in playing guitar, that was just like, he's a god.
Especially with the Foos, you guys have been, had so many different opportunities playing for world leaders, presidents, those sort of things. Share with me some of those experiences. Some of the more like, oh, holy cow, I can't believe this is happening.
Oh man, there's been so many. It's nuts. Like, oh God. What would be? The biggest one for me personally was when we got to back up Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
That was like, that's just like, the only way that could have been better is if Keith Richards had been there too. And maybe Mick Taylor and Ron Wood, Charlie Watson, the whole gang. But yeah, we got to back up Mick Jagger, man. It's like, that just there's nothing cooler on earth to me.
Oh, especially with your Stones lineage.
Yeah. And like, he was so amazing because I've told this story many times, but it was really fun to watch. Like, he would come in because, it was Saturday Night Live, and you have you're there for most of the week doing rehearsals and stuff, like starting around Wednesday or whatever. Shows on Saturday, obviously. So we rehearsed with him a few times leading into it, and every time he'd be like, yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of not go full blast. And the minute we would start the song, he would just transform into fucking Mick Jagger, and he'd be bouncing off the walls, just being Mick. Because even though he had a sore throat or whatever, like, he couldn't not be Mick Jagger. It's great.
So Mick Jagger trumps any presidents. Do you guys play for
100? Of course, yeah, a million times over. Yeah, it's cool to go play. It's nerve wracking and insane and totally surreal when Obama's standing right over there. Don't get me wrong; those are. We got to play at the White House 4th of July party thing one year when Obama was in office, and that was really cool. We all brought our wives and kids, and you're standing on the White House lawn watching fireworks. It's just like, one of those pinch yourself moments.
Yeah. What band gets to do those sort of things? The scale of Foo Fighters. Can you give me an example of something that, obviously playing for, at the White House, something that's unique to a tour to show the scale of a band like Foo Fighters?
Unique to a tour. Probably the amount of semi-trucks, I guess, you have. That's always kind of impressive when you walk around the back of the venue and you're like, whoa, it's a big production.
That's amazing. Did you ever get a chance to meet Eddie Van Halen? Did you get a moment with him at all?
Never. Not once.
No? Okay.
No. Sadly.
Keith Richards?
Nope.
Oh.
So a lot of people left on the bucket list, man.
It sounds like it.
And if Keith Richards is listening, I'm sure he is. I'll come to you.
So this next record, title still undetermined, it's going to come out on Blue Elon Records.
Yes.
What is the relationship with Blue Elon Records?
It's great. Yeah, no, they're really cool. It's coming out on Blue Elan in most places, and then in the UK specifically, it's coming out through a label called Snake Farm. And and it's been great, man. It's been really good working with both labels. Or bringing some spirit to it. Having some help getting your music out is always great, and working with people that are fired up and pepper you with ideas, is good. I put out those songs last summer on my own, just to try to get a sense of like what kind of works and what doesn't work. And it is really nice to have, to be working with these labels, because it just helps, man.
Right.
More people helping get the word out, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, there were some releases that you had. I think Hard Lessons, the vinyl was put out on East Beach, which I think is
that's
a
the
boutique
beach that
label.
I grew up going to. Yeah,
Okay.
so that record came out through 30 Tigers, and when you put like 30 Tigers is like it's not a record label per se. It's like a distribution deal that you do. So it's kind of like your own label in a sense, and then there's certain things that they do as far as getting it out, and they were great. But yeah, you have to come up with like a name for your record label. So East Beach was the beach that I grew up going to in Santa Barbara, so I just called it East Beach Records and Tapes. Although I don't know that it ever came out on cassette tape, but hey.
You had the possibility to expand your business if so
That's
required.
Right.
So that's different than Le Coq Napoleon Records.
Yes, which was also just me. Yeah.
You got a lot of names.
And that was, I know, well, that was born out of my wife used to make fun of me. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she made fun of me like in reference that I was like a little Napoleon rooster. And I don't know, I just took that and came up with a label name around it.
Okay. So you're jumping labels even within your own household.
That's right. Le Coq Napoleon had to drop me as an artist because I was unruly, and then I got signed up by East Beach Records that then dropped me, and then I got signed by Blue Elan and Snake Farm.
You've got a lot of material out that hasn't been released on vinyl. A lot of the Viva Death, Jackson United.
Oh yeah.
What's the status of those projects? I mean, obviously you continue to move forward. Any thoughts about kind of what the legacy of those projects are going to be, or reissues or revisitations at all?
At some point, the Viva Death stuff is my brother Scott's thing. So I don't know what he has planned as far as ever putting anything out on vinyl or any of that stuff. The Jackson United stuff, I have to, I have to get that all up on the DSPs at some point, because it's not in a lot of places, I don't think. And people complain to me on social media about that. And it would be cool at some point to do some kind of like vinyl release. But I mean, it's just too much other stuff going on all the time. And like corralling all that is just like, I have a long list of things to get to that matter a lot more.
Fair enough. This new album that you have, the untitled one, is it finished now, or are you still doing recordings on it?
Oh no, I finished it a while ago. It's the recordings were kind of here and there throughout 2021 for the most part, and then I still did some overdubs probably into 2022 or whatever. It was like in the middle of all that, I was in the middle of touring, so I would like go record a couple songs and work on that for a little bit, and then go back and record a couple more songs. So it took a minute to record all 10, but it's done. Mm-hmm. It's mixed and mastered and ready to go.
And you're just parsing it out bit by bit, just a little bit, like
little
fish
drips. Bait. That's right. We put out a song last week, so just over a week ago, and we're putting out songs like every 10 weeks or so, I think is what the plan is. So there'll be another one coming soon. The next one was the first two that we actually put out, and it wasn't planned this way, were the first two that we recorded. It just worked out that way. Yeah.
All right. So that album's done. And I imagine you probably have a stash of a pile of unfinished songs and ideas that are for future projects. Yeah.
Sure.
Are you one of those writers that just kind of, do you finish a song complete as you do it? Or do you have bits of ideas that you pull together over time?
I have bits of ideas oftentimes that then I will sit down and kind of woodshed on them, get them done. Yeah.
All right. So, Chris, I'm going to start wrapping it up. Is there anything you want to talk about we haven't talked about?
I want to talk about that gigantic Grammy in the background on your screenshot. Is that a super Grammy?
What are you talking about? Oh, that.
I'm talking about the gramophone. It's like the extra, the triple extra large, man. You got that for selling 70 million records. They had to invent a bigger Grammy.
That's right. Yeah, Clive Davis handed me that for my work in Thriller.
That's right.
No, that's a 1924 gramophone. It still works.
It's real?
No
shit.
It's got the crank on it and everything. And
cool. Cool.
These things have no sound control. So the way, if you want it quieter, you have to stick a sock in the bell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's an original bell. A lot of those were melted down during the war. So yeah, this one, was stashed away in the basement of a trader. Yeah.
So what, they got melted down and used for like bullets or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. God, I never knew that.
Yeah. So if you ever find a gramophone and, sometimes the bells are reproductions, that's what you want to check for to see if it's an original one, then the value will absolutely skyrocket. But yeah.
So that one was owned by an American-hating trader.
Exactly.
Who couldn't even be bothered to melt it down for the war effort.
Probably of German descent, yes.
Exactly.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Vinyl Guide. I do appreciate you sharing those stories, and it's absolutely a thrill to have you on the show. I want to encourage people to check out Chris's track, Black Top, White Lines. It's available on all streaming services. Now, of course, if you go to the streaming services, just go ahead and add Chris Shiflett to your playlists, and it'll alert you when these new songs are available. And you could, of course, go to chrisshiflettmusic.com. He's doing some tours around, so if he's in your neighborhood, make sure to check him out and carry his guitar for him. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Vinyl Guide, mate.
Right on, man. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, there we go, people. Mr. Jake Jackson, Mr. Boat Plastic, Mr. Chris Shiflett, all rolled up into one. And I do encourage each and every one of you to check out his solo work. It's solid songwriting, very hooky. You'll have these songs in your head for the rest of the day. Black Top, White Lines, available on all streaming services now. There is an extended version of this interview available only to patrons of the show at patreon.com/vinylguide. Go there now, help support the show, hear all the episodes uninterrupted, commercial-free, extended with extra content and questions, and of course, high-resolution audio to please your earholes. That's patreon.com/vinylguide. And that's it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter, share them in different groups and forums, Reddit threads and subreddits and all those places on the interwebs. And of course, leave us a positive review if you can. Go into Apple iTunes or Spotify, log in, give us 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10, however they rate us. Say something nice, something encouraging. That is always appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some music, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.